80 billion animals killed every year. Each one is an individual sentient being. Did not ask to be born, but it was bred into existence. Did not ask to live a life of suffering, but it was made to suffer. And did not ask to be killed, and it was killed. For what? For food? For a bit of protein?
I remember someone saying to me, Albert, soy is actually responsible for a lot of environmental problems.
Before I went vegan, my biggest fear was that I'm going to lose all my gains. This comes from that myth that's perpetuated that vegans are skinny, malnourished, they're unhealthy. Seeing that they did it made me think, okay, fine, maybe I'll be able to do it as well. I remember when I did it, you were kind of also thinking about your gains as well.
Since turning vegan, I've managed to beat my previous conditions in bodybuilding, obviously running hundreds of miles, doing the endurance factor, and then Muay Thai this year. It hasn't pulled me back in any way, it hasn't hindered my recovery, haven't lost muscle mass.
People that consumed more plant protein had better health outcomes in terms of cardiovascular disease, cancer outcomes, all-cause mortality. People have been eating soy products for 2,000 years in Asia. Are they infertile? Are they having high rates of breast cancer or anything like that? No. When people hear the word estrogen, they immediately think women, I'm going to become a woman if I eat phytoestrogens. Why do vegans keep making food that looks like meat? It's because, well, we didn't give up meat because we didn't like the taste of it. We gave up meat because we saw all the horrible things that are associated with it.
Okay, cool. So I'm coming up to 2 years vegan now. And maybe about 3-4 months ago, I did a post on 9 things the public should know about veganism, but don't. And it was fairly popular. And since then, I've sort of updated some of my thoughts, shared it with you. And this is actually going out after, is it World Vegan Day? After World Vegan Day.
Yeah.
But with the 2-year anniversary coming up for me being vegan, Veganuary on people's minds in January, where many people, I don't know if you can probably tell me the stats of how many millions actually try it.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a few million each year. It's doubled kind of year on year as time has gone on as well.
Okay, so year on year, we're getting double the amount of people that are doing Veganuary. So I thought it was a perfect time for us to sit down and reflect on the last 2 years, but also you've been vegan for a lot longer than I have. 6 years?
Yeah, it was 6 years in July, yeah.
6 years in July.
As in July just gone, yeah.
So on this podcast, we want to go through these 9 points. So there's 9 different points related to health, fitness, ethics, culture, lifestyle, all different elements of veganism. And then we'll just sort of discuss it, see, you can bring in some research where necessary, bring in your experiences, I'll bring in mine. And we'll just sort of riff on these 9 different points and see where the conversation goes. The goal of this podcast is, as a vegan myself, for you being vegan as well, is simply to raise awareness, make people hopefully think a little bit differently about it. If one person just tries Veganuary off the back of this and maybe even makes the switch, then I think it's well worth the time. So let's kick it off. I've got the list in front of me. But the first thing the public doesn't get about being vegan, or should, is it doesn't make you weak, unhealthy, skinny fat, or overweight.
So obviously you've now been doing it.
I'm looking at 2 jack guys in the camera right now.
I mean, you've obviously this was my fear going into it, right? Like before I went vegan, we've discussed this before, that my biggest fear was that I'm going to lose all my gains. Obviously, when you're training in the gym, this comes from that myth that's perpetuated that vegans are skinny, they're malnourished, they're unhealthy, and it's these tropes that are kind of perpetuated by the media as well. Like especially in like film and things. When you think of a vegan, you think of like a skinny hippie kind of thing. Obviously, vegans come in all shapes and sizes, and we see that. And since I think the game changes, that really changed a lot of people's minds. That you could actually see kind of fit, healthy, muscular men and women that were vegan or plant-based, and it just kind of blew that stereotype out the water, I think. Obviously, few years, like when I first went vegan, there was a few bodybuilders around that I was looking to, Nima Delgado being one of them. There's a few others as well. Seeing that they did it made me think, okay, fine, maybe I'll be able to do it as well. But I remember when I did it, you were kind of also thinking about yourself, about your gains as well. But then you saw that I'd done it, and I think that maybe got your mind thinking.
It definitely gave you a bit of social proof, Yeah,
it gave you, because when you know someone that's done it firsthand, I think you're more likely to be able to make that change. I think, we've done quite well, but it's trying to break that stereotype. But I think still it's perpetuated by the media mainly.
Well, for me on that one, it's like, for me the biggest thing is the proof's in the pudding. Like since turning vegan, I've managed to beat my previous conditions in bodybuilding, on a plant-based diet. So the ability to get lean was sort of ticked off. I think I set some Romanian deadlift PRs and floor press PRs since, like relative to body weight, since turning vegan. So that ticked the strength element off for me.
Yeah.
And then obviously running hundreds of miles,
Mm.
doing the endurance factor.
Yeah.
That ticked that off. And then Muay Thai this year. And I think if there was anything to like break me, so to speak, being vegan, it would have been this year. But I've managed to sort of, I don't even think about the fact I'm vegan, if that makes sense. Like I feel like it just is now. It's like
Is,
it's not an element of like I'm vegan and I'm doing this. It's just I'm just doing these things and I happen to be vegan.
Yeah, exactly.
But it hasn't pulled me back in any way. It hasn't hindered my recovery.
Yeah.
Haven't lost muscle mass. So I feel like all those concerns I had for years and years.
Interestingly, I remember when you first started out and you were smashing some of your PRs and stuff, and you're feeling really good. And I remember you saying to me, "Hey, this is like that. This is like game changers. Is this legit?" I remember saying, "Yeah, I think it just the diet's I think you're just in a good phase, and the diet's maybe just clean up a bit." I mean, there is something to say about the recovery element of the diet. Like when you do go plant-based or vegan, you're eating a lot more nourishing foods, so fruits, vegetables, and in that you're going to get all these polyphenols, antioxidants, which do help recovery. There is kind of evidence to back that up, where diets that are higher in these polyphenols, people have lower inflammatory states, they are recovering better. That doesn't say that an omnivorous diet won't provide you with those if you're kind of tailoring it well, but a vegan diet, you're more likely to get these things because you're going to be tailoring your diet around it. And then just you talking about the endurance aspect, you've roped me into running now as well. And when you look around at all these endurance athletes, shockingly a lot of them are either vegan or plant-based. Like I told you about watching that documentary with Fiona Oakes, just one example of
very
someone.
Impressive woman.
Exactly. She's been vegan since she was 6 years old, has 17 knee surgeries done, doesn't have a kneecap, decided to take up running in her 20s or 30s, started smashing world records in marathon running, ended up becoming the first woman to run the first woman to run a marathon on each continent, including the North Pole, and then ran the Marathon des Sands in the Sahara whilst vegan. And it just makes you think she can do that.
That's not a factor anymore.
Yeah, it's just not a factor, right? Like if the diet was deficient, we would see it. Like we'd see people that are doing the extremes of sport. Had the guy the other day 450 miles. I can't remember his name, but 450 miles. He
Rich Roll did
a post on it. Rich Roll's plant-based as well, but this guy did 450 miles, 108 hours. I think it's the new world record at that as well. Real feat of endurance. Guy's vegan. He's been vegan for years.
Wow.
So if the diet was really going to be hindering you in any way, we'd see it in these extreme athlete examples. People can turn around and say, "Oh, these are genetic freaks. They just train hard." But surely, if the diet was going to be holding them back, we'd see it. They wouldn't be beating out their omnivorous counterparts. But every time we see it,
and for a lot of these people, it's their careers as well, right? If they're trying to seek the 1%, they would. That might be a thing that they might have to reconsider, but they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's been more and more vegan athletes coming to light now, and it's becoming more of it's less of a rarity of oh, he's vegan.
Yeah.
Or she's vegan. One thing I get often is, but you built most of your stuff you built your muscle on plants.
Built it on animal protein.
It on meat, and then just maintaining on plants. What do you say to that one?
I mean, you could turn around and say that to so many people, but then there's people that done it since birth or done it give you an example. There's a bodybuilder, I think she's based in the US, or Jahina Malik. She's been vegan since birth, so all her muscle was based on plants. Tory Washington, another one, he went vegan and then started competing in bodybuilding, so he built a lot of his muscle on plants. You got people that have never eaten meat. Nima Delgado, never eaten meat. He had, I think, dairy and maybe he had eggs. I think he had dairy when he was growing up, but he went vegan and then competed in IFBB. So a lot of these people have built themselves on plant protein. You and I have maybe examples of people that were animal-based first and then went eating plant protein. But, I've been doing it for 6 years. Surely, you know how muscles work as well. You get muscle breakdown and synthesis happening perpetual motion all the time, right? It's been 6 years. Surely if the plants were deficient, I'd be wasting away right now and all my muscle would have broken down. But clearly it hasn't. I think my physique it looks better, and I feel like I maintain my weight at a decent body fat better than I used to as well. And I'm clearly not getting weaker. So I just say it's a cheap excuse that people can give and turn around and point and say, but I guess that's what people do, right?
I think also in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll hear more of people that built their bodies on plants. Because when we started out, that wasn't a thing. People were just saying, you need to eat.
You need to eat meat.
Eat meat, right? And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll get more people who have built their bodies on plants.
For sure.
And then they continue to build their bodies on plants, and then they maintain on plants. But I just don't think we're going to have enough evidence anecdotally at this stage. Whereas
Yeah.
in the future, I think it would be there.
Yeah, I think as the more people we see becoming vegan, more plant-based, we'll see more and more people actually that athletes that are actually building muscle based just on plants. Yeah.
What about the overweight factor? Because some people have said, or even on the unhealthy thing, was where they go vegan, but they don't stay vegan because they were gaining weight
They're gaining weight. Okay.
or they were starting to feel unhealthy as a result of it.
Yeah.
What do you think potentially is going on in those scenarios?
I think it's important that we're honest about the need to plan the diet well, no matter what you do. And I think when people do go plant-based or vegan or change anything for that matter, let's say you try any new way of eating, unless you've done the research well and you know exactly what you need to be getting, you might fall short. So some people, especially like athletes is a good example again, if they change from eating an omnivorous-based diet to a vegan diet, but they're not eating enough calories, they might start like losing weight, they might start not performing as well, but that's because they're not eating enough calories, and that can happen, right? So similarly, if someone decides to go vegan or plant-based, but they're just getting kind of the processed like vegan ready meals, let's say, or just eating vegan burgers all the time, and they're not actually feeding their body with nourishing food, then they might start feeling a bit rubbish, they might start gaining weight. But it's not the diet or the dietary pattern itself. It's not veganism itself that's caused that, or the dietary aspect anyway. It's not that. It's just the planning of the diet. I think a lot of people kind of, it's a new sexy thing to try and they'll jump into it, which is great that they want to do it. And I really support anyone that wants to do it. But I think doing the research and knowing what it is that you need to be getting in your diet and making sure you supplement intelligently in all these things will help you preventing that way. And even with like weight gain or weight loss, making sure you're still eating the calories that you need, rather than going too surplus or too much in a deficit.
We'll cover the different elements of planning as we go through this podcast, especially towards the end. But at the beginning, it kind of segues nicely into the second point on this. I think the first one, by the way, is ticked off. Like, it doesn't make you weak, unhealthy, skinny, fat, overweight.
Yeah,
I think the proof's in the pudding.
Exactly.
And also in many other members that we've helped through R&C, Nisha Vivek is a really good example. Someone went vegan and got into the best shape of her life and improved their health as well, making the switch. The second point is it's not difficult to hit your protein target, which probably segues nicely into this one. Because this is always the big one, isn't it? It's like, how'd you hit your protein? Just an hour ago, we were at the vegan festival, or little market, and someone said to me, how many grams of protein do you hit and how do you hit it? Do you find it difficult?
Yeah.
I said, no, it's actually pretty easy. But let's discuss like the protein factor. Like, is it hard to hit your protein target? And maybe give some tangible examples of how you hit it. Because it's all well and good saying, it's easy. But how does it actually happen?
I think people overestimate how much protein we need anyway. And that's, again, another myth that's been perpetuated by the fitness industry about, you need protein. Everywhere you look now is protein. And we become a very protein-centric society. So people think you need a lot more than you actually need. You and I both know the data shows, all the studies show that beyond 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight, so the lean body weight, the kind of effect on muscle building sort of plateaus out. You might get a few extra gains eating at 1.8 or 2, but not really. And in the deficit, you need a bit higher, so about 2, because it's muscle sparing. So, okay, fine. Let's say your target is 1.6 grams per kilo. For a 70 kilo person, how much is that? It's like just less than 120 grams, give or take, roughly. So it's only going to be hard to get that from a plant-based diet if you don't know what foods contain protein. So actually, provided you're equipped with the knowledge of what foods you can eat that have a good amount of protein per calorie, so stuff like tofu, tempeh.
Well, let's give some examples of different food groups, and then all the ones that relate to protein.
Yeah, I mean, so
what are your favorite sources of protein?
So soy products would be one of them. So soy products would include tofu, tempeh, edamame beans themselves. You can get bean-based spaghettis and pastas as well, which are really high in protein. Soy milk, soy yogurt. So that's all your soy. And then you can even think about soy protein powders. So that's your soy products right there. They're very high in protein. Then it's your beans, legumes, lentils, which I consider kind of like a protein and a complex carbohydrate source. I wouldn't just have that in my plate as the protein source, but you could theoretically still get enough if you have a good serving of beans and legumes. And then whole grains as well. So like quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, all these whole grains, because I think people fear carbohydrates a lot, and so they fear eating grains. But provided you're an active person and you're eating within your caloric requirements, getting whole grains is really healthy because there's a source of fiber. They provide, and other minerals also come from whole grains as well. I think you get zinc from whole grains, you can get selenium from whole grains. So provided you're eating a good amount of whole grains, you also get some protein from that as well. Seitan, another one. So that's vital wheat gluten. And that's been
How is that actually made?
So I actually don't know. I actually don't know how they
People make it at home, right?
Yeah, you can get the powder. You can get vital wheat gluten, the powder, and then you just add water to it, and then you knead it into a dough, and then you let it set, and then you can make this kind of, it gives that texture of meat. But that's been around for a couple thousand years, I think. I think it started in Asia where people were using it to make mock meats. Again, because Buddhists back then weren't eating meat. Because of staying non-violent, not wanting to kill animals, so they needed something. So they ate tofu, but they also developed this textured kind of almost mock meat from this vital wheat gluten. It can give you between 30 to even 70 grams of protein per 100 gram serving, provided you're not gluten intolerant or celiac. You can, and if it digests well, then that's a really good source of protein as well. And the protein powders would be just another one. And it's not like when you're bodybuilding and you're an omnivore, you're not using whey protein powders. You are, right? Like we did for years. We would have 1, 2, sometimes even 3 scoops a day. I think it was unnecessary looking back, but it was a convenient way to hit protein targets. And I think vegans shouldn't be scared to use a protein powder, especially if it's going to be something convenient for them.
What are your typical meals in the day?
So breakfast, I like my oats. So oats is a great whole grain. So provided you're getting whole grain oats with some soy milk, I do put a scoop of protein powder in my breakfast because it's just an easy way to get a good amount in.
So do I.
And that protein powder will be pea and rice based. So you're getting 2 different sources there. And then lunch will be like a stir fry using either tempeh or tofu. Again, I might use whole wheat noodles. I'll put some edamame beans in there as well, lots of vegetables. A dinner would be similar to lunch, or it would be like a salad, or it would be like a burrito bowl. But I'm just making variations of the same things, really.
So do you vary your protein sources quite a lot?
I kind of vary them meal to meal, but I really do stick to kind of either the protein powders. The grains will be either quinoa, brown rice, the oats. Yeah. Then the beans will be, I vary the beans a lot because there's so many different beans, right? You got edamame beans, Patel beans, you got black beans, you got cannellini beans, there's so many beans, kidney beans, chickpeas.
Same with lentils as well.
Right? So many different lentils. So you can vary those and keep it different all the time. And then you got your lentil and pea and bean paste pastas as well.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of varying it just because I like a bit of variety. But I think there's about maybe 4 or 5 meals that I make consistently, which gives me that, I don't have to think about it too much. Because otherwise it's that whole paralysis, decision fatigue, paralysis burnout. There's too much going on. And you just like keeping it simple. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I go protein powder, oats, peanut butter, first thing. Then I'll do tofu scramble, avocado toast, veggies. Then I repeat meal 1. And then for the evening, it's tempeh, edamame spaghetti, some variation of lentils or beans. It's usually mixed. I'll batch it, but I'll batch a few days, but then change it each time. And then with some sort of carb sauce.
Yeah, and a lot of vegetables. I've seen you quite a lot
of vegetables.
I've seen you bake your vegetables and you quite a lot of them, don't you?
Yeah, we mix or stir fry or bake.
Yeah, I always saute mine, but yeah, it's just as long as you're getting a good amount in every day.
And they form my staples, and then I'll sort of experiment when I go out to eat. But mine is my lack of variety is usually because of
laziness.
Laziness, yeah.
Yeah, laziness.
I was always like that.
But it's comfort as well. It's you're comfortable, and I think it's important that variation, we still do variation because it's good for our gut microbiome, having different plant-based foods, but also just to keep it different.
But the way I do it is like, for example, if I have red lentils for 3 days, the second time I'll do yellow lentils, then I'll do mung beans. Like I'll rotate it like that because they all have similar-ish caloric and macro profiles. So that I can get away with just sort of changing them up. Yeah. So you get the variety in taste and texture and micronutrients, but you also keep it easy as well. Yeah.
I think one thing people need to realize is that to make this work, you are going to have to learn some culinary skills and learn to cook, and that's not a bad thing. And I think a lot of people shy away from this because of that convenience factor. But if you want to make sure you hit your protein targets, you need to be knowing how to work with this stuff, you can't be blending your tempeh like I heard someone doing. I heard this on another one of your podcasts with, I think it was Nisha, who didn't know how to cook with tempeh, so she blended it, which is, she wanted to get it in, fair enough. I think first time I ate tempeh, I spat it out because I just didn't like it. Yeah, I just didn't like it. It wasn't in Bali, obviously. It was here.
It's honest, it took me ages to. When I was kind of put off by tempeh, I was thinking like, I can't eat this stuff.
But you had it in Bali, right?
I had it in Bali. I was spoiled by it in Bali. Like when you have it in Bali, it's a different tempeh, right? And when you get the usual ones from here, it's not quite the same.
It's not the same, but if you know how to flavor and cook with it, then it becomes good. I find that breaking it up,
with your
crumbling
hands, right?
it with your hands,
it makes a big difference compared to a knife, right? Why is that?
It tastes like chicken. I don't know. Like,
so
I don't want to say that.
I found
that
vegan, when I knife it, it doesn't taste the same as when I crumble it in my hands.
It's the surface area. I think when you're breaking up with your hands, you're creating more surface area for flavor to get in. So when you're cooking it, then there's more area for it to get in. When you're just cubing it, you've got the 4 areas of, not 4. How many faces a cube has?
Yeah.
How many faces a cube has?
4.
Nah, it's more than 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces.
Yeah, let's not get
distracted.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're getting less surface area basically when you've got a cube, but when you break it up,
6.
You get more. Yeah, 6. We got there in the end. Well done. When you're breaking it up with your hands, more surface area, it absorbs the flavor way more. So if you're having trouble with your tempeh, guys, trust me, break it up with your hands. Fry it up in a bit of.
What do you do? Do you soy sauce?
Yeah, a bit of soy sauce.
That's what I do. Soy sauce, crumble it up, and it's done in a couple minutes.
I like a bit of chili, sriracha as well. Yeah. Just make it a bit spicy.
Honestly, that is like when I discovered. You know what happened? It's just one day all the knives were in the wash. And I was like, I can't be asked to like go and wash them, so I'm just gonna crumble it up. And then
see the laziness.
Then Chani, because I made the tempeh, and she's like, "What have we done with the tempeh today?" I was like, "I don't know. It tastes so much better, doesn't it?"
So it's a game changer.
And I was like, "Yeah, so we just don't have to use a knife anymore."
Yeah, exactly.
I do the same with tofu as well. I scrunch it in my hands, so it gets crumbled.
Yeah.
And then
for your scrambled.
Tofu. Yeah. And then I just add turmeric, paprika, and salt usually.
Yeah. The trick is not to add too much turmeric because it overpowers it. I think a lot of people go wrong doing that as well when they make tofu scramble. They add too much turmeric sometimes, and it's all you can taste.
Yeah.
It's a very strong.
I think if you can do those two, and then you can learn how to cook beans and lentils. Either from the can, it's going to be quite basic. Right?
It's easier from the can.
If you want to make it a bit more tasty and actually learn how to make like mung dal, I think if you can do that, then it'll make your dinners, and you can just do so many different things then, and it can make all the meals really taste really good.
Yeah,
and you can be really full. I find
exactly.
Like proper plant-based meals, way more filling.
Yeah,
and that was a really good hack for when I dieted last year.
Yeah,
one thing I found was even right to the end, my plate was still big.
Yeah.
Like I had like 1,200-1,300 calories in a day, but my dinner was massive.
A lot of fiber.
It was only like 300-400 calories, but it was just huge.
Yeah,
and that's such a big hack if you're trying to control weight. Or lose weight.
Yeah, it's why people tend to lose weight more easily on when they go whole food plant-based anyway, because it's calorie sparse but nutrient dense.
Yeah.
And you just
the volume just so
the
big.
volume is there for all vegetables and lentils. Yeah.
What about so we're on the topic of protein, and we've said like it's not easy to hit it, but what about animal protein versus plant protein? Like, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by eating plant protein? Are we sacrificing gains that we could otherwise be making? Like, what's the deal with it in terms of research? I know we're having a discussion in the car.
Yeah.
And I said to you, got to say this stuff later on.
Well, I mean, there is a difference in the sense that animal protein, so like from meat, is easily digestible and absorbable because there's no fiber in there. The protein is just the structure, and with plants, the protein is bound up in like fiber and the plant structure. So you kind of have to be able to cook them to make that softer, and then really chew and then be able to digest it. So I mean, the absorbability might be slightly less. Yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is people talk about is the completeness, and when they talk about completeness, they're talking about how many amino acids are in the protein. So protein is just made up of amino acids. You get there's 20 different amino acids, and 9 of them are essential that our body, you have to get them from your diet. Body can't make them. The other 11 your body can make from the others. So when you're ingesting protein, you break it down into these individual amino acids. So people think that plants are lacking in certain essential amino acids, which is not true. They all have plant protein and animal protein have all the essential amino acids you need. But with plant sources, it varies from source to source. Whereas a piece of meat, it's like flesh, isn't it? It's the same as your muscle. So it's going to have all the amino acids you need in the correct amount, let's say. Whereas with plant protein, like let's say something like a grain like rice, it will be lacking in lysine, which is an essential amino acid. I say lacking, it's still there, but slightly lower amount. than optimal. And beans will be slightly lower amount of methionine, one of the other essential amino acids. But provided you're eating these varied sources, this is why I say eat varied sources throughout the day, you'll get all the essential amino acids you need. So really, these differences only matter if you're eating really low protein diets, because you might not get enough of the essential amino acids, or if you're not cooking your food. So if you're just eating raw beans, which no one should be eating raw beans because you can't digest it, you'll get very sick.
You're not talking about raw beans out of the can. You're talking about...
So beans out of the can are already boiled.
Yeah,
They've already been cooked and they've been soaked. I'm talking about the raw, dry beans. If you eat those, like the dried ones, you'll fall very sick and you won't be able to digest them either. Whereas we cook our food. So cooking helps destroy a lot of the anti-nutrients that are found in some plants anyway, and that increases the absorbability. So when you eat cooked foods, you're going to increase the absorbability anyway. So you tackle the absorbability issue there by cooking your food, great. You tackle the completeness issue there by eating enough plant protein and not eating really low amounts. So then what's left really? We worry about kind of what's the outcome, right? So there was a study, I think in 2020, and I've spoken about this before as well, where they got two groups. They got omnivores and they got vegans. They matched their protein intake at 1.6 grams per kilogram. They put them through, I think, a 12-week lifting regime. They measured their muscle mass and strength and power beforehand, and they measured, I think, the size of the muscle before and after, and they found no difference, right? If there was going to be a difference, even when they matched them at the protein intake, we would have seen a difference between the two, right? We would have seen that actually, even at the protein levels being matched, the plant guys were doing worse. That's what we should have seen, but we didn't. So clearly, from just that study, I don't think it matters. I think we need more studies like that. But if it mattered, we wouldn't have seen that result, I think. But I think more things like that need to be replicated to kind of say for certain and kind of just put complete nip it in the bud, say, there's no difference in actual outcomes when it comes to plant and animal protein. Because I don't think there is a difference. I think that it only matters if you eat really low amounts, which none of us are doing.
Yeah, and I also think we would have probably experienced it by now.
Yeah.
You mentioned like muscle protein synthesis and degradation is always happening.
Yeah.
If we were seriously lacking in that, we would have felt it by now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we are eating around 1.6 and a bit above. So we're doing ourselves a favor by getting all the essential amino acids we need. And we're probably, if the absorbability issues are even there, it's probably like a few percent. It's just not making a difference at those high levels.
Yeah, I think on a separate micro scale, when you're looking at it in a petri dish, it might make a difference. Potentially.
I mean, the studies they done it on rodents and pigs. So all these absorbability studies they've done. Yeah. So the way they measure your protein quality is they have a score. So there's the digestible indispensable amino acid score, the DAS, and they have the protein corrected digestibility amino acid score, the PDCAS. I think the PDCAS is now outdated and they use the DAS scores, but both of these are derived from testing kind of digestibility in mice models and pigs, because pigs' digestive systems are similar to humans. We can't rely on that. You need human studies, and the only way you're going to do human studies is you test it on people that have their small bowels coming out in a stoma, because you need to sample it from their small bowel. Like you need to sample kind of what protein they've ingested, what's coming out the other side, and then seeing what the difference is. And we just don't have enough of those studies anyway. So they're going off rats and pigs. So I think I wouldn't put much stock into those kind of, as you said, petri dish. It's not really a petri dish. It's the rats and the pigs. But it's more important that we look at the human outcome data, and the human outcomes show that there's no difference.
There was something else you mentioned in the car around, like, was it the environmental factor of it?
I think just protein in general. When we look at kind of talking about what's superior, there's the outcome data on muscle gains and strength, so the absorbability and completeness, all that. There's health, there's environment, and I think ethical as well, right?
All right.
So So obviously we've talked about muscle building. There's no difference. We talk about health. Consistently in observational studies and epidemiological studies anyway that have been done on populations looking at health outcomes, those that consume more plant protein tend to have better health outcomes than those that consume diets that are higher in animal protein. And people will say, oh, but did you correct for this? Did you correct for that? The plant protein people probably did other things that were healthy. No, but this is after you've corrected for all the confounding factors. The people that consumed more plant protein as a percentage of their diet had better health outcomes in terms of cardiovascular disease, cancer outcomes, all-cause mortality than people that eat diets high in animal protein. And that makes sense, right? We know that if you're eating higher red meat, processed red meat, you're going to have higher risk of colorectal cancer. If you're eating higher red meat and higher saturated fat, you're going to have higher risk of heart disease. And these are the man's biggest killers, right? Heart disease and cancer. So increasing your plant protein intake protects you against this stuff.
Why is that?
Because when you eat plant protein sources, like we're talking about beans, beans is such an underrated food. It comes with fiber. Other plant proteins come with like polyphenols as well, again, which are quite protective. But mainly, I think it's the fiber component, especially when it comes to things like colorectal cancer. We know fiber is protective. We know fiber also helps modulate the gut microbiome, which is a bit of a buzzword now. Everyone talks about the gut microbiome, right? But we know eating diets that are higher in fiber, you'd have to eat crazy amounts, like hundreds and hundreds of grams of fiber. But just eating, over 30 grams of fiber per day improves the functioning of your gut. It feeds the good bacteria in your gut, whereas diets that are high in meat are not doing that, and they're deficient in fiber as well. So I think that's one aspect of it. The other thing is obviously meat, like red meat especially, comes with saturated fat. It increases blood levels of something called TMAO, which is linked to cardiovascular disease as well. I think all of this is probably what's driving a lot of these outcomes that we see. And that's why switching from an animal protein to plant protein actually improves health outcomes. So they've done substitution analyses where they've looked at if you switch out 3% of the total calories coming from animal protein for now plant protein, you can reduce your risk of mortality from all causes by, I think, 5%. There's so many studies on this. There's not just one.
And this is based on red meat, or is it?
It's based. I think
red meat versus plant, or is it like chicken versus plant?
So they've done these analyses for red and processed meat, but they've done another one for poultry as well. Fish seems to be the only one that's kind of like neutral or neutral when it comes to kind of plant protein as well. Fish seems to be the one that's neutral, but you're going to tell everyone to just suddenly start eating loads and loads of fish, because that brings us on to the next two things, right? We were talking about environment and ethics, right? So I've already said plant protein is better for your health, it's better for your health outcomes. But when it comes to environment, we know that when you farm animals, you need more land, you need to use more water, you need more resources. The downstream effect of having loads of animals is that they produce a lot of species stool, which, okay, you can use as fertilizer, but it also drains off into the water, causes eutrophication, causes algal blooms, destroys water supplies. So the environmental impact of raising all these animals, you're killing 80 billion animals a year, yeah? We need to feed them, we need to put them somewhere. They take up so much land. You have to cut down swathes of Amazon rainforest just to make room for cattle ranching. So environmentally, it's a no-brainer that if you then switch from that to plant protein, which takes up less land, less water, you're going to have a greater impact. And I think there was a study by Oxford University that looked at kind of different dietary patterns and what protects against kind of climate change. And they found that vegan diet was the most protective. So the single most important thing that an individual can do is to go vegan. There was another study done on, I think, 40,000 farms by Poor, and I can't remember the other person that was involved with the study, but they looked at 40,000 farms and they found that plant proteins, use the least amount of resources to grow. So when you're talking on a global scale, when we're trying to prevent something that's happening, like climate change, no matter how much people want to deny it, it is happening. We want to try and prevent that and protect the earth for future generations. Switching from meat to plant protein just makes sense. So that's the environment ticked off. And the last one we said is ethics. I mean, I don't even need to beat this drum, right? Like 80 billion animals killed every year. Yeah, each one is an individual sentient being. Did not ask to be born, but it was bred into existence. Did not ask to live a life of suffering, but it was made to suffer. And did not ask to be killed, and it was killed. For what? For food? For a bit of protein? You can just grow some beans instead, So I don't even need to need to go into the ethical side of things.
With the environment factor, I remember someone saying to me, "Albert, soy is actually responsible for a lot of environmental problems."
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not as clued up as you are when
Yeah.
it comes to all these things. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
But what's actually going on with soy then in terms of the environmental?
So I think
factor?
monocropping is a problem. So you're growing a lot of crops on one piece of land is a lot of problem. And I agree. I'm probably not as clued up on that as I should be either. But I also know that 70% of the global soy is fed to animals.
Wow. Okay.
So only a small percent, I think 5% or something like that, is fed for humans. I think 70% is for animals, and the rest of it is used for like other products like soybean oil and things. So for direct human consumption, it's a very small percentage that's actually used for things like tofu and stuff. Most of the soy in the world is actually used for feeding animals. Yeah, for farming, feeding animals. So people love pointing to that, going, oh, they're cutting down the Amazon rainforest to make room for soy. Yeah, that soy is being fed to animals in the USA. It's made to make soy meal that's fed to the animals. So
For consumption.
for then human consumption, yeah. We're not just feeding the animals for the sake of it. They're getting killed and eaten by humans, right? So if you just stop doing that and just say we're not going to need all these animals anymore, then you won't need to grow as much soy crops either.
Yeah.
And the soy crops, and then that land can be rewilded. It can be returned to animals, improving biodiversity. Yeah.
So we've covered protein.
Yeah, too much.
So it's not difficult to hit your protein target, which is number 2. And then
not.
this segues what you just said there. Segues really nicely into soy. So in point number 3 still keeps coming up. So may as well address it. Is soy isn't going to ruin your hormones or your health.
Yeah. I keep hearing this as well. Like even now, like people are still scared. And I heard it the other day. Like wasn't at work, but I was at like a teaching thing, and someone mentioned like phytoestrogens, like it was some dirty word. So I think the whole myth about soy like being an endocrine disruptor or something comes from the fact that soy is derived from soybeans. Yeah, just so if people don't know where soy comes from soybeans, and this is a really special bean. And I've heard someone else refer it to as like a magic bean.
Really?
The reason being is because it's higher in protein than other beans, has a good spread of all the essential amino acids compared to some of the other beans, and it has a higher percentage of fat as well, polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats. I think almost 50% of the calories from the soybean come from fat, actually.
Wow.
But good fats. And the other property of soybean is that it's quite high in something called isoflavones. And these are found in a lot of plant foods, isoflavones. You can kind of interchange that word with phytoestrogens. So they're a type of isoflavone. And they're called phytoestrogens because they're plant-derived, so phyto, and the structure of them looks so similar to estrogen, okay? And that's when people hear the word estrogen, they immediately think women, boobs, it's just straight away your mind just goes to, I'm going to become a woman if I eat phytoestrogens, which is, it's just wrong thinking. And that myth has come about because of this fear of the word estrogen for some reason. Men and women both make estrogen, right? So we need estrogen, we make it ourselves. So it's not like the male body has zero estrogen in it. We make it. It's an important hormone. Of course, our body makes what it needs and it keeps that in check. When you consume phytoestrogens, it does nothing to your own endogenous estrogen production. It does nothing to that. And there's actually meta-analysis of 41 studies. I think it was released 2 years ago,
wow.
looking at whether the consumption of soy isoflavones or soy products does anything to testosterone or estrogen, and it found it doesn't. It doesn't increase or reduce testosterone. It doesn't increase or reduce estrogen. It has no effect on the actual hormones itself. But yet that myth keeps perpetuated because you hear the word phytoestrogens. And then you think, okay, fine, but these phytoestrogens, they must, because they look a bit like the structure is like similar to estrogen, they must do the same things that estrogen does in the body. It must cause things like breast cancer. It must feminize men. It must do something, right? Okay, well, let's look at what it does. People have been eating soy products for 2,000 years in Asia. Do they look like they have a problem with kind of, like population, are they infertile? Are they having high rates of breast cancer or anything like that? No, they're not. In fact, they've got some good health outcomes. They have lower rates of prostate cancer, lower rates of breast cancer. And actually, soy consumption, when we look at, again, human outcome data, look at epidemiological studies, populations that are consuming soy have favorable health outcomes. So much so that doctors now promote soy as part of a healthy diet, soy products, and it's in fact used in, I think a professor in Canada, Professor Jenkins, I think it's David Jenkins, he developed something called the portfolio diet, which is a diet specifically designed to lower your cholesterol. And 2 or 3 servings of soy products are in that diet, because soy uniquely, for some reason, has cholesterol lowering properties. And I don't know if it's the isoflavones causing that, but it may be. So these isoflavones, the phytoestrogens, they may bind to estrogen receptors in the body, yeah, but they have a different effect when they do. They either block it, so then your own estrogen can't bind to it, or they increase the activity. But we don't know exactly how much by or anything like that either. Like we just haven't been able to measure that exactly. Like, is it causing the exact same effects as actual estrogen? It's not, but it's having for some reason is having these other health outcomes which can be measured, like lower risk of heart disease, lowering your cholesterol, lower rates of breast cancer, improved survival in people that have breast cancer. In menopausal women, or postmenopausal women, sorry, it's improving symptoms like hot flushes, improves kind of bone density as well. So it's having all these effects that you might think are because of the effect on estrogen receptors, which may be how it's exerting its effect, but it's certainly not causing negative things. So I don't want people to think, oh, because it's got phytoestrogens, I should avoid it because it's going to make men grow breast tissue. It doesn't do that. So, you know, if it did that, we'd see it, because so many people eat soy products. So many people eat them, you know? And I think it all comes from, I think, you can overeat soy. So that is one thing. You can overeat.
But the
soy.
servings are so high, right?
Yeah, as in you'd have to, so I'd say if you're eating 4 or 5 servings of soy products a day, that's probably fine. That's fine. But if you're going like 10, 15, 20 servings a day, one, you've got a problem. Like you're doing something wrong there. But that might have certain negative health effects, which were measured in one guy. There was one case study of this guy drinking 3 or 4 liters of soy milk every day, and he ended up having some issues, like I think he ended up getting gynecomastia. So that one case study led to this whole perpetual myth that because of that, phytoestrogens, you have to fear them, they're going to make you grow man boobs, they're going to do this. I'm not asking people to eat huge servings of soy products, you know, and getting them in your diet is actually going to have more positive health benefits than anything else. And it's
also really filling as well.
Really filling, great source of protein. Again, you know, I don't want to go back to that second point, but soy products are a great source of protein. So
you still get a lot of people say, I don't want to eat, I'm eating soy twice a day, it's too much, or I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
And it just keeps coming.
I just want these people to explain, like, what is the fear? Like, where is that fear derived from? Is it something
it's all the things you said.
Yeah, but so you've got people perpetuating those myths, right? And especially now, social media is such a place where people can just get behind a mic and say whatever they want. But you need to have the studies to back it up, right? Like that meta-analysis of 41 studies 2 years ago. Any work there's a guy called Mark Messina. He actually works for the Soy Board in America, right? So his job is to research this stuff, like, as much as he can. Like, he cares about, is soy causing problems? What are the health outcomes? And, you know, the review papers by him and the meta-analysis released by other people that he then cites, you know, the people are researching this stuff to see, actually, is there a problem with soy? Because if there was, it wouldn't be in the food supply. You wouldn't be putting in everything, you know? But people have this whole conspiratorial thing where, you know, the government's out to get you. That's why they're putting soy and everything. They're trying to get you to eat soy, which it's just bunk. It's just bunk.
What if you're allergic to soy? How do you approach point number 2 that you made? We talked about protein.
Yeah.
We actually met someone today allergic to soy.
Allergic to soy, yeah.
What's the approach to protein? What's the approach to protein for? I mean, apart from the fact that
eat other stuff.
Eat the other stuff.
Eat other stuff. Yeah.
Is that it? Is there?
Yeah. We've talked about plenty of different foods that you can eat, right? Like other lentils, other legumes. Assuming you're not allergic to all legumes, you know you can explore other things. People make tofu out of chickpea. Have you seen that? Yeah, and lentil as well.
I've seen that.
I've seen someone make. Literally, there's a video the other day of someone using red lentils to make tofu.
Wow.
So, because all you got to do is make like the lentil or chickpea milk, let's say, then coagulate it just like you would do with tofu, and you can make tofu out of it. So if you want to go to the lengths of getting that kind of tofu, you can do it. But I'm sure that will be a thing at some point as well. It might become more mainstream where people are making tofu out of these products without the use of soy because of soy allergies, right? But, you know, if you're not celiac as well, you can use seitan. It's you have to find other things around it. I don't think being allergic to one thing is a good enough excuse for saying I can't go vegan. You know, I think it's fair.
That's the point I'm probably getting at.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Like, you know, I've met vegans that are allergic to all sorts of things, right? You know, I've met celiac vegans. I've met vegans that are allergic to like legumes. I've met vegans that are allergic to all sorts of things. But it's not all legumes, obviously. But you know, it's working around that. It's finding ways to make your diet fit. You know, and there are ways. You know, I think giving the excuse is the easy way out. Yeah. And I think people seek comfort and the easy way. And if it's easier if you have that excuse to give, like, look, I'm allergic, that's why I don't do it. Okay. I feel you for you that you're allergic, but what else could you do? What else can you do? I think it's just not important to some people either. Yeah, like, you're only going to do it if something is important to you.
Yeah. Point number 4, protein consumption is not just about eating mock meats. That's a very common thing where people think, vegan, all right, let's look at this isn't chicken.
Yeah. Is it vegan chicken? Is it
Beyond Burgers.
Yeah.
Like the idea is like, all right, we're just going to replace everything I eat normally
Yeah.
with the meat alternative and the processed version.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, no, it's unhealthy because it's processed.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, we kind of given the idea, but let's discuss mock meats as a whole.
Yeah.
Mock meats, meat alternatives, and maybe dive into which ones are good, which ones are potentially more for treats, which ones should you have as part, which ones are okay as more daily staples. Well, what's the deal on mock meats and meat alternatives?
Yeah.
And maybe you want to differentiate, the processed versions versus, so I think you picked up on something I said, like processed mock meats, and you're like, well, actually,
They're just plant-based meat alternatives.
Yeah.
They're all processed. Don't get me
so
wrong.
let's discuss them.
Yeah.
Well, what are mock meats? Are they good for you? Should you include them daily?
Yeah. So I think there's a huge array now of different plant-based meat alternatives, or alt meats, or mock meats, or whatever you want to call them, right? And these are foods that are, they are processed, and they are made in a way to kind of give you that same texture and mouthfeel that meat gives you. And a lot of us grew up eating meat. It was a normal thing to do, right? And it's so normalized that most people eat meat. So then when you do go vegan, because if you go vegan for ethical reasons or whatever reason, you may crave that mouthfeel and texture that meat gave you. And that's, I think we can be honest about that. That's what happens, and it's completely fair to say. When people say, why do vegans keep making food that looks like meat? It's because, well, we didn't give up meat because we didn't like the taste of it. We gave up meat because we saw all the horrible things that are associated with it. We didn't want to contribute to the suffering of 80 billion animals every year, so we decided to stop eating meat. But now we kind of miss the mouthfeel and texture and stuff, and that's fair because we're only human, and humans are gonna kind of miss the things that especially make them, give them comfort. And food is a source of comfort for a lot of people, right? And you miss that feeling sometimes. So mock meats are a great kind of way of replicating that. When I first went vegan, that's exactly why I did what you said. I'm just going to switch everything out for the meat alternative of it. So I was having lots of kind of vegan sausages. I was having lots of vegan chicken. I would have vegan burgers. But part of me also knew that this can't be the healthiest way to carry on living my life. I can't just rely on these foods. I think process has become a very dirty word. And any registered dietitian or nutritionist worth his salt will tell you that we shouldn't fear all processed foods. We shouldn't fear any foods anyway, but we shouldn't kind of fear the word processed either, because processing sometimes actually improves the nutritional quality of food. It makes things more digestible sometimes, right? Tofu is kind of processed. Soy milk is processed. Soy yogurt is processed. A lot of food is processed in some way, so that we can consume it safely, right? And some things are fortified as well. So there's nothing wrong with the whole process thing. So I don't want people to think they can't make some processed foods part of their diet. But it's about choosing the ones that are going to be of benefit to you, or at least be less, have less of a negative health impact, let's say, right? So when I'm choosing kind of mock meats that I will include as not like a staple, but have more often, I'd say, I look for the ones that have higher protein per calorie. So the ones that aren't really like calorie dense, so they're not really, really, really fatty. So higher protein per calorie. I look at the fiber content as well, because it's still fiber. Like the body will still treat it like fiber. It will still, when it gets down there, your body's not going to digest it properly. Your gut microbiome is going to feed on that. So fiber is another thing I look at. So if it's got a good amount of fiber per serving. And then I look at the saturated fat content. If it's got a low amount of saturated fat, then I view that as a good thing, because I get saturated fats from my diet like a good amount anyway. And really, you should be getting about less than 10% of your total caloric intake should be coming from saturated fats, to minimize your risk of cardiovascular disease. No matter what some people may tell you, that is one of the ways we can minimize our risk.
Who would tell you otherwise?
There are some people that think eating loads and loads of saturated fat is good for you. Carnivore diet zealots and stuff. People that think eating loads of meat is good for you. Anyway, they basically deny that saturated fats have anything to do with heart disease.
Why is that? Just I know it's a bit of a tangent, but just go on that tangent. Why do people say, oh, you should eat loads of saturated fat? Because I've been there, right?
Yeah, we did.
I used to eat loads of butter. I used to eat loads of coconut oil. I used to pour it all over my salads.
Oh yeah, same. Yeah.
And hope it'd melt, but it didn't melt.
Coconut butter in coffee, bulletproof coffee.
The full shebang. Yeah.
Oh my god.
The more saturated fat, I thought the more testosterone I get.
Yeah. All nonsense. It's just a myth, but again, perpetuated by people. And then people read articles and they think, it's this whole thing about. It's like when we ate the paleo diet, this whole ancestral way of living, right? Like eating lots of meat is what our ancestors used to do, and they were fit and healthy. They weren't dying of heart disease. Again, they were. dying of heart disease. They weren't living to their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s like we are now. And we're trying to live healthier, longer lives, right? And I think people love being told that whatever they're doing already, they love being given the license to do it. So like, eating bacon and steak and stuff like that tastes good. It's really salty and fatty. It tastes good. So if you tell someone, hey, that's actually good for you, they're going to love that. They're going to love that messaging, right? They're going to be your fan. And you tell loads and loads of people that, suddenly you got loads of fans. You got loads of people to sell stuff to. You got loads of ways of making money now. It's not sexy to stick to the nutritional guidelines and, look at the work of lipidologists and cardiologists and stuff, people that are actually seeing patients daily and seeing people having massive heart attacks from diets that are so high in saturated fat and stuff. It's not, for these people, it's about telling a story, and telling the story of eat like your ancestors and eat like cavemen so you can be big and strong is a really nice story. That's it. That's all it is.
That story before.
We both did, man, because we were kids, right? But then we grew up. So, I think when you grow up and listen
I remember I ate a kilo of meat, a kilo of bull's head once at a restaurant. And I was so proud of myself. I was like, I feel like a man.
I know. I watched you do it.
Yeah.
And that's when around the same time I started eating beef for the first time.
Yeah.
And now we're both vegans.
Yeah.
So anyone can change.
Anyone can change. Go from eating a kilo in one sitting.
Yeah.
To never eating it again.
To never eating it again. Like, you wouldn't even think of it now. Like, and see, neither would I. And I think as we grew up, I started actually looking at, okay, what are the guidelines? Where are these guidelines based from? Like, who is coming up with these guidelines? Is there a reason for it? What is the data there? And a lot of people that were quite, I guess, quite skeptical of that hypothesis that saturated fats can raise your LDL or non-HDL cholesterol, which is then causal for heart disease. A lot of people that were skeptical of that are now also coming around and changing their minds on it. People like Lane Norton. He still eats a lot of meat. I mean, not a lot, but he eats meat. But he's come around to the idea that actually that is true, that eating a lot of saturated fats is not going to be good for you. But then you get still these kind of really loud people that are kind of talking about the all meat diet, which keep perpetuating that myth. So, I guess you have to look through the misinformation, and look at actually what are the nutritional guidelines, what are the lipidologists and cardiologists saying, the people that are actually in the research, seeing patients, the people that actually care about this stuff, because we don't want to see people having heart attacks. We don't want to see people having strokes. So we don't want to tell them the wrong stuff either, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, how do we even get into the segue?
Well, I took you on a tangent.
Yeah, you did.
On saturated fats. So tell me, you were discussing
Bring me back.
how you bring meat alternatives into your diet.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned
so,
saturated fat was one of the fats.
So I would say, keeping the saturated fats lower from the source.
So are they okay to eat on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis?
I think,
how do you incorporate them?
I always say compared to what? So if you're going to eat that compared to, let's say, some processed red meats, then yeah, they're better, right? And it also depends what as well, but they're probably better.
Yeah.
And we actually had an interesting study called the swap meat trial, which was done by Professor Christopher Gardner in, I think, Stanford University, where they got some people and they put them on 8 weeks on a animal-based diet with 2 servings of red meat beef burgers, good quality as well. I think it was organic and all that. And then they put them on 2 servings of Beyond Meat, and they did it kind of 8 weeks apart. And they looked at kind of some of the health markers before and after, and then they switched them over. And so the group that had the meat the first time, they had plant burgers the first time, and then they had animal after. So they had kind of 2 phases of the trial. And in both times, they saw that the ones that were eating the plant-based meat burgers had better markers than the ones that were having the beef. And that's just one study, but I just found that interesting. The fact that that's all they switched. They kept the other diets completely the same. They didn't change anything else. So the only thing they changed for these people was the 2 servings of the Beyond Meat and the 2 servings of the beef, and the ones that had the Beyond Meat was better. So I'm not telling everyone now to go eat Beyond Meat. It doesn't mean that. I always say compared to what. So processed or plant-based meat alternatives are probably better for you than, let's say, processed red meat and stuff. But compared to things like beans and legumes, I still think beans and legumes are better.
How often do you eat meat alternatives, not meat?
Yeah, probably once a week or once every other week.
Is it usually?
Yeah, when I go out, or once a week. Sometimes I have it at home if I'm craving one. I just feel like having one. But I think the longer I've been vegan, the more I've moved away from them, I think, as well.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't appeal to me as much. When I first went vegan, it was like, oh my God, and I wanted to try all the different burgers, all these different things, and it was like a shiny new toy. Whereas now that I've been vegan for 6 years and I'm also into the nutrition and the health side of things, I can see that actually the real the real benefit to be had in this diet, if you want to do it for your health, I'm not saying the vegan diet is for health alone. I'm saying if you want to do it in a healthy way and you care about your health outcomes, then actually eating things like tofu, tempeh, chickpeas, lentils,
And
all
that
stuff's bad
applies
for you.
to even an omnivorous diet as well. It's like
Yeah.
you're not going to go out and eat burgers.
Burgers, yeah.
If you're interested in your
Yeah.
health, you'll
Yeah.
probably take a different approach.
Yeah, you'd probably have that as a
But I
rare
think
treat.
as a vegan,
Yeah.
it could be easy to kind of fall down that
Oh yeah,
that
easily.
sort of route, especially if you come from a lot of meat or
Yeah.
you really enjoy meat.
And these things are high in protein as well, so that it'll sell you on that. You look at it, and go,
Very
it's
expensive,
quite a lot, and they are more expensive. So that's why people think a vegan diet is really expensive.
That's why it
because
put me
they're
off. I stopped. I didn't buy them because I was like, yeah, it doesn't quite add up. It's like 160 grams whole packet. It's £5 or £4.50.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
If I'm gonna need to get the protein, this is gonna be £20-30 a day.
Yeah, and that's where people trip up as well, where they say that a vegan diet is too expensive because they're buying all these meat alternatives, which are expensive because they're not produced on the mass scale that meat is yet. Supply and demand. I think once the demand goes up, the supply will go up and it'll get cheaper. But I think your cheaper vegan foods are going to be your beans, legumes, whole grains, vegetables. Tofus can be cheap depending where you go. And leaning on those is going to be better for you.
Apparently, it's quite expensive in Dubai. I was in Dubai recently.
Yeah?
And I was talking to some friends. They were like, "Yeah, tofu's like £8 here, same pack as we get home."
Supply and demand, man.
Yeah.
That's the problem. They need more vegans out there.
I think we've covered the protein consumption is not just about mock meats.
Yeah.
Any other bits to add on that point?
Yeah, I think don't fear eating mock meats. I think they're fine to eat once in a while. That's what I would say. And just look out for those things, protein per calorie, fiber.
And just to confirm, what is a mock meat? So is seitan considered a mock meat? Like we had a seitan burger together.
Yeah.
Is that would you say that's a mock meat? Or was that like
I mean,
that felt like a meat burger, but
I'd say that's a minimally processed plant food. It doesn't require as much processing as something like let's say a Beyond Burger that's made in a factory. Seitan, you can literally make it at home. You can get Vital Wheat gluten powder, add some water, and you can make it. So there's different scales of this, and I always look at the ones that have the least amount of ingredients as well. Again, I don't want to demonize food, and I don't want people to get put off. Think that just because the ingredients list is long, it's going to be bad for you. You kind of need to look beyond these things. I think the overall dietary pattern matters the most. What are you eating 80 to 90% of the time? And then allowing yourself that 20-10% leeway where you go, oh yeah, I feel like having some vegan sausages. I'm going to have them. And don't beat yourself about it. Don't feel guilty about it. Just find a way to work them into your diet, but don't make them your everyday staple kind of thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. So point number 5, you don't need a lot of supplements if you go vegan.
Yeah.
So which supplements do you need? Which other supplements are a waste of money? Because that's obviously another reason why people don't go vegan. They think, I'm missing all these vitamins and minerals. Surely that can't be a natural way to live.
Yeah. Before there was any vegans, there was never any vitamin stores. Holland Barrett's didn't exist. I'm kidding, obviously they did, yeah. So all these stores that sell vitamins and minerals and stuff, supplements and stuff, they're not marketed at vegans, they're marketed at everybody. So everybody is, there must be the reason there, right? And I think it's just the diet quality is what matters, right? And I think omnivores, vegans, anyone, diet quality matters. And if your diet is lacking, there's nothing wrong with supplementing just to make up the shortfall, right? And I think with vegans, the one thing that you have to and absolutely have to supplement is B12, vitamin B12, because it's needed for it's a cofactor used in modulating your genes to make new red blood cells. It makes it healthy red blood cells. It's used for to make healthy nerve cells as well. So it's needed for nerve signaling. And when you don't have B12, you get B12 deficiency. You can run some real problems with neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy and stuff. So B12 is really important.
Yeah,
you have to get it in, and you have to supplement it if you're a vegan. There are vegan sources of B12, but they're not as reliable. So like duckweed, certain seaweeds. Duckweed is a type of plant.
Okay.
Duckweed, yeah, it's a type of plant that has some B12 naturally occurring in it, but you're not going to find this. I've never seen it. And then Marmite has B12 in it. Nutritional yeast has B12 in it as well. And then you get fortified foods like yogurts and milks and stuff that have B12 added as well, which is fine. I consume those as well, and you can get B12 in that way. But I think the reliable way is just to supplement once daily or once weekly, depending on the dosage you take, and just do that. And then that way you don't have to worry about it. I always encourage people to get a blood test. like just in generally, just check your health out. And if you're vegan, just say that to your doctor. Like, hey, if you're doing bloods, I'm vegan. Just can you check my B12 level? The B12 serum B12 level is not necessarily the 100% most accurate way of testing, but if it's low, then you're likely to be low. That makes sense. And if it's normal, it's likely to be.
What sort of symptoms would you get if you're low?
You might get tiredness, and that might be because of the anemia side of things. But tiredness.
So is that when people say vegan diet caused me low energy?
Not necessarily. Not
I've
necessarily.
heard that one,
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily, because I think so. When you go vegan, I think with B12, you got 3 months supply of it, and then after that, stores start dwindling. Roughly, I can't remember exactly. I think it's still in the liver, but I think most people that feel tired and stuff when they go vegan is because they're not eating enough calories. They're probably just not getting enough energy. But yeah, B12 might be part of the issue as well, or even might be iron. Iron might be part of the issue as well, because again, plant-based foods have different type of iron, heme iron, and women need about 14 milligrams of iron a day. Men need about 8 milligrams. So provided you're getting enough iron from eating lots of very different sources of plant-based iron. So again, lentils, legumes, tofu is good for iron. Dried apricots, green vegetables. If you're eating enough and you're getting enough in, and pairing it with things like vitamin C, it improves the absorption by almost 6 times. So if you're doing that and you're still having issues, get a blood test and see. But again, iron deficiency, B12 deficiency, it's not just seen in vegans. Like I think 50% of omnivores, 50% of people in the USA have a B12 deficiency.
Wow.
And most people are omnivores, right? So it's usually the diet or absorption's impacted. We see it a lot in elderly people because they eat less food, and the absorption is a bit less as well. So it's not just vegans that are at risk. I think everyone should just be aware that they need to be eating.
How do you take yours? Is it?
I just take a tablet. Yeah.
Multivitamin.
So I take a multivitamin
with B12 extra,
which got B12 in it. Right.
Same one I do.
Yeah, because it's just. I think with multivitamins, it's easy just to get what you need, but some multivitamins might have stuff that you're already getting enough of in a vegan diet, like folate. Like we don't need extra folate. So there may be a case for getting just things that you're maybe lacking in rather than taking a multivitamin. But I'm happy to just take a multivitamin, just forget about it, to be honest.
What else do you take?
Omega-3s. Yeah. I had to go at you once, didn't I? Omega-3s.
In what way? I
asked you if you took them and you said no.
Well, the thing is, when I went vegan, you said to me, I should take omega-3s. So I did it for about 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
And then when it came to reordering, I was like, I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah. So omega-3 is a tricky one.
I think I asked Dr. Nagra on the recent podcast.
What did he say?
I don't think he said it was necessary.
Yeah, I mean, so there's 2 schools of thoughts on this, right? So
didn't you say something like, I'd rather be 80 and know that I've given it my all? Yeah.
I think I have enough I would call it dispensable income for me to take omega-3s. And if you're someone that doesn't, then it may not. So omega-3s themselves, let's quickly just talk about them just in case some people don't know what we're talking about. So omega-3 fatty acids are a type of essential fatty acid. And that essential means you have to get them in your diet. Just like the essential amino acids, you have to get them from your diet. So omega-3s include the short chain alpha linoleic acid, ALA, which is derived from plant foods like hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts. They all have ALA. Whereas the longer chain, EPA and DHA, are derived from marine life. So algae, phytoplankton, and fish, and other kind of seafood. So when people say eat 2 servings of oily fish per week, the reason they're saying that is to get enough omega-3, the long chain DHA and EPA into your diet. For vegans, we get probably more than enough ALA in our diet, provided we're eating those foods I just said. So chia seeds, as long as you're soaking them and grinding them, you're going to absorb the chia seed better. Flaxseed, again, you want to grind them just get ground flaxseed. And then walnuts and hemp seeds, yeah? And the hemp seeds, you have to get them halved because eating the whole thing, you're not going to digest it. So provided you eat enough of those, so like a couple servings of those a day, you'll get enough ALA. But then your body converts that ALA to DHA and EPA. And how much your body converts differs person to person. And it can be as low as like 10% conversion. Funny enough, Indians have a higher ability to convert it. And I think it might be because a lot of kind of central living Indians didn't eat a lot of fish. Unless you lived on the coast, you weren't really eating fish. And traditionally, people have been kind of vegetarian for like the last 2,000 years in India, right? So they probably weren't getting enough plant-derived DHA, EPA.
Yeah.
It's also found in kind of red meat products as well, but again, lower amounts. But when I say people supplement, I always say take an algal supplement. So the fish are getting it from the algae, and then it's assimilating in their tissue, and then you eat the fish. If you just cut out the middle fish and don't eat fish, leave the fish alone, leave them in the sea, you can just get microalgae supplement. So it's actually taken from the original source, put in a capsule, and then you take about 800 milligram a day or two.
You're quite bullish on them, aren't you?
In a sense, like
Then-
I think they're good for you.
You said there's two schools of thought. You're one of the.
Yeah, I'm one of those thoughts that says I'd rather just take
lots.
the 800 milligrams. Yeah, because from what I've read and what I've listened to, and the people that are kind of deep in the omega-3 research, I think there's a guy called Professor Bill Harris or something.
Yeah.
Like, people who are deep in the research say that we should be making sure we get enough
Well,
omega-3s.
why? Like top 3 benefits. Like what?
So-
what are you gonna? Is this something you're gonna tangibly feel, or is this something that's gonna show up in your blood work,
I think
or is it gonna show up in?
there's a way to
life?
measure it actually, but yeah, it's a test that I don't see anyone do. It's for the omega-3 index test
Okay.
to see if you've got enough floating around your system. But main 3 things are brain health, heart health, and blood health. So, omega-3, in fact, the reason they're so important is that they are needed by your nervous system, your brain, your nerves. They're needed to protect your heart as well. We just see that people that have a good intake of omega-3s have better heart health outcomes. Not enough for us to suggest it, like to people, to take as a supplement. But in all the guidelines and healthy eating guidelines and the ones that are developed by the European Cardiology Society, it advises people to eat 2 servings of oily fish per week because it's protective for the heart. And yeah, it helps your blood from not clotting too much, or so it prevents clots basically as well.
And I'm not against omega-3s, by the way. But why? How do you know these are the things that are helping, for example,
Yeah.
the blood clots?
Yeah, as in, again, they would be just mechanistically by how they work.
Okay, fine.
They find
I mean, I used to take about 10 grams a day. At one point
Yeah,
in my
that's
life.
too much.
At one point in my life.
Yeah, I know, because I know
I used to take a lot of
I know there were-
omega-3s. Then I tapered it down. Then
Yeah.
I kind of
Yeah.
maintained the dose at 3 grams.
Yeah, so there is such thing as taking too much
Yeah,
omega-3s.
so I've kind of like I've spent a lot of money on omega-3s in my life.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm against them.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
more
yeah.
just, I just wonder, like, is it worth it?
Yeah, I think again, from what I've read, it is, and I don't know the ins and outs exactly of how they would help let's say, what they do in the coagulation cascade to help you preventing clots and stuff. But people that eat diets that are lower in omega-3s
Yeah.
tend to have poor outcomes. And then your diet's also getting a lot of omega-6s in, which is another essential fatty acid, which we get from like plant foods. And if you have too many omega-6s, then you can sometimes outcompete omega-3s. So then what happens is you have an imbalance of omega-6s to 3s, which again, I'm not as clued up on this as I should be, I guess, to speak on it. But again, if I look at like the experts that speak on this, they say that that's bad for you if you're having way too much omega-6, because it can be quite inflammatory. That's not to say you should now not have anything that has omega-6. That's also a crazy way of thinking. I think people are very all or nothing kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's about keeping things in good balance, and having a good amount of omega-3s every day is going to be better for you than having, let's say, none. And because they're essential, and having the normal good amount of omega-6s is also better for you than having absolutely none or having too much. So it's about keeping that balance. And I think, yeah, as provided you're eating good source of ALA and you're converting it, then you're probably fine.
I don't think I have many of those ALA sources you mentioned. So I think I might have to.
Well, there you go. So
I have to re-up on that order.
Again, I think I said to you as well, like it's almost like an insurance policy to make sure I'm getting enough of what I need. So if there's a day that I didn't eat, let's say, enough walnuts, which I should be doing, I should be having a handful of nuts every day. If I didn't have enough walnuts that day, if I didn't have hemp seed that day, luckily I eat chia seeds and hemp seeds pretty much every day.
Oh, really? What, in your porridge?
So chia seeds is in the overnight oats every day, and then I'll sprinkle some hemp seeds on top, and then I'll have a handful of nuts a day as well. So I probably am getting enough ALA.
Yeah.
And also flaxseed oil is like the richest source as well of ALA. So flaxseed oil you can
Do you
drizzle.
think you convert it well?
Probably I'm Indian, right? But you just drizzle that on your salad and you get a good amount. Yeah.
So we covered B12 omega-3s. Is there anything else to consider that's worth taking? Outside, of course, protein powders if you want to cut
Yeah,
that as
I mean, creatine.
Yeah,
Creatine's a good
yeah,
one.
yeah.
So again, not just for if you're an athlete and you're trying to improve your kind of muscular power, because it's a good source of direct energy, right? And that's how creatine works. It just improves the energy, your ability to make ATP for short bursts. But I think there's some studies. I love saying some studies. So some studies have also been done to see the cognitive benefits of taking creatine. And I think there's someone also mental health side of things as well. Like,
Yeah, it's very
help,
positive.
Does it help for like things like depression and stuff? So I think it's new science talking about cognition and depression. But I think as more research comes to light in that, we'll see actually the benefits of it beyond just for muscle health. So I think, of course, creatine, the only way you can derive it is from eating meat or supplementing. And if you want to get enough to boost performance in the gym, you'd have to be eating like over 2 kilos of meat a day, red meat a day. Which we don't need to talk about why that's absolutely wrong, but it's just easy to supplement. All the studies that have been done using supplementation. So taking like 3 to 5 grams per day of creatine, completely fine, and it's like to be beneficial.
Yeah,
So
I'm a
say
big
creatine.
fan.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan.
The other thing of vitamin D is an obvious one. I think everyone should take vitamin D because, well, not everyone, but like, you know, living in the UK, if you're living in Australia, if you're living, not Australia, sorry, UK, or if you're living in like northern latitude countries like Scandinavia and stuff, you're not going to get enough sunlight. Canada, another one actually. If you're not getting enough sunlight and if you're a darker complexion, then vitamin D is really important for bone health. So yeah, I would say vitamin D is another one.
So you've got vitamin D, omega-3s, creatine, and B12.
Yeah.
As essentials for vegans.
Yeah.
Or considerations for vegans. The
Consideration-
essential B is B12, and then the other three are considerations.
Yeah, I mean, there's other nutrients that people need to be aware of, but I don't think you need to supplement them, like iron, zinc, iodine. Those are the 3 main ones, really, that people need to, and calcium, I guess.
And they would only be considerations if shown up in blood work?
Again, so iron, if it shows up in your blood work, then yeah. If you're someone that's menstruating and having quite heavy periods, and you're losing a lot of blood, and you're getting tired, I would suggest speaking to a physician and getting your blood work checked to make sure you're not iron deficient, and that way you can sort that out if that's with a supplement if you need to, or just look at iron-rich foods. Calcium is because people probably don't know that they're not getting enough, but because again, when vegans go from having loads of dairy to not, unless they're having calcium-rich sources, they might be missing out on the calcium that was in the dairy.
Yeah.
And we know dairy is not the only source of calcium. You can get calcium from lots of green vegetables. You can get from calcium-set tofu, like Cauldron brand is really high in calcium.
Yeah, it's game changer when you told me that.
Cauldron, yeah. Like, people don't even think about this stuff.
Tastes better as well.
I think it tastes better as well. And then the soy milks and fortified milks as well, not just soy milk, but fortified milks that have calcium added. Again, good source of calcium. The other mention was iodine. So iodine is really found coastal areas because it's rich in kind of, again, seafood, but actually in areas where there's not much iodine in the soil, or they're not having access to seafood, places like the US, they've actually put iodine in the salt. You can get iodized salt there just because to meet your iodine needs. And it's a micronutrient, so you need a really small amount, and vegans can get it from like things like seaweed. So if you eat like a couple nori sheets or some seaweed, you can get it, or just get it from fortified foods. So I just get it from like fortified milk every day. I don't even think about it. Yeah.
So that's supplements. Any other things on supplements?
No. Oh, what? Don't waste your money.
Yeah.
BCA.
Well, that was the point, right? You don't need a lot of supplements if you go vegan.
Well, you don't. We just said multivitamin, which has everything you need anyway, and a B12. But yeah.
And my B12 is included in the.
So there you go. You got.
It has it's a high dose of it.
So there you go. So B12. So multivitamin and omega-3, really,
Yeah.
and creatine if you really want. That's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I take.
Yeah.